Hey guys, James Milne, E42. I'd like to talk about how to install Polyglot on the Debian platform. This is an x86 or X64 flavors of Debian. First off, we actually got to get Debian itself. I'm not going to cover how to actually install it. I expect you can figure out how to get to the actual CLI. As you can see behind here, this is a base install, very fresh. To grab Debian, the version I particularly use, I use the net install, so it's a super base release. So what I do is I just go out there, Google Debian, go to Getting Debian, and then I get a small installation image, and I grab the AMD64 version. Now, I'm actually running on vCenter, ESXi. This is just a virtual machine that I've created on, in this particular case, ESXi 6.5, vCenter 6.5, which is the latest at this time. But once I got that all installed here, you can see this is the actual ISO that I used. Got it all installed, got it ready to go. I've had a couple of people come up and say the script doesn't work. The script isn't working. Well, apparently, if you install just the base version of Debian, it actually doesn't install sudo. And sudo is basically just a way for a regular user to run as an administrator without actually having to log in as the administrator or the root account. So by default, if we type in sudo here, as you can see, command sudo is actually not found. So the very first thing we're going to have to go ahead and do is we will actually install the sudo package. So we actually have to log in as root using the su command. Type in your root password. Now we're actually logged in as root. So the first thing we have to do is apt-get install the sudo package. Take just a few minutes. Grab everything it needs to do. I use sudo so that the actual script itself doesn't have to run as root, just a couple of little pieces to do some install packages and things to that effect. Now, one last thing that a lot of people get hung up on, by default, your user account is not enabled to actually run as an administrator. Typically, you would think you would be, but since sudo wasn't installed by default, then we'll actually have to tell sudo that me, as E42 in this particular case, can use the sudo command. So in order to do that, we need to use the visudo command as root. This will get us to the visudo, or to the etc sudoers file, and this tells us everybody that's available to run it. In this particular case, anybody in the sudo group or the user root. So I'm going to go ahead and just add myself in here. I'm just going to copy exactly what the user root is. Okay, just typed it in as is. I'm going to hit at the bottom. I'm going to hit Control O to do write out, and then I'm going to hit Control X. Okay, all done. Exit it out. I'll go ahead and exit out of this, and I should have the ability to do that now. Okay, so just to test it, I'm going to go ahead and walk through, instead of running the script like I did in the Raspberry Pi version, I'm going to try and walk through all of the actual steps to install Polyglot itself. All the prereqs, everything, we're going to go ahead and do it manually just so you guys can understand. So at this point, you can go grab the script, let it run, do everything you need to there. But the rest of this video is going to be how to manually install Polyglot. So first thing we need to do, we just need to check and make sure that all our packages are up to date. Okay, now it says sudo, okay. I've got the regular lecture, make sure I enter my password. Enter my password. Then I will go ahead and update my package list. That was fairly quick. And then we need to go ahead and install all of the prerequisites that Polyglot requires. So in this particular case, we're going to want to get MongoDB server. So we use MongoDB is a NoSQL server that does all the storage and of all the nodes and the settings and everything else. We install Git, which we actually store all of the node servers in raw code because they are all open source, including Polyglot itself. So we install those using, they're all hosted on GitHub, so we install those using Git. Some of the node servers are Python 3. Some of them are Python 2. which the latest version of Python 2 is 2.7. And then we install the pip packages, which are the package managers for each one of those. That way, when the node server is installed, if it has any prerequisites or additional packages that they need to be installed, we go ahead and install that package manager so that those prerequisites can be installed by the installation script of the node servers themselves. Curl is just a way to grab files. So we grab some files and check some stuff there. And zip, obviously, is what you think it is. Okay, so as we continue on down, it's going to go ahead and grab everything that it needed to. As you can see, all the packages were installed successfully. So just to check, we will do a system control check and check the status of MongoDB. Okay, since we just installed MongoDB, we want to make sure that it is now up and happy and running, and it is. So that's great. So that's a good start. Next off, we need to put Polyglot somewhere. So we're going to go ahead and just create a folder here under my user E42, a home for Polyglot. We're going to call it, we're going to make a directory called Polyglot. Then we're going to go into the directory called Polyglot. Okay, as you can see, just a blank folder there. Then we're going to go ahead and use the wget command and go ahead and grab the binary from out on Amazon S3, which is where all of our binaries are hosted. This is the official location. So now that we have the binary, we need to go ahead and extract it from its compressed format. And tar.gz is just a easier way, Linux version of kind of archiving things. So the zip version in Linux. Okay. So now we have the actual binary. We can go ahead and get rid of the archive. Okay, so now we're all ready to go. We can just run it straight as we want right here. If we just run it, it'll run just fine. I want to go ahead and create a startup script to go ahead and run it every time I boot, though. That makes sense to me. I don't know why you wouldn't. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and wget the actual startup script from our GitHub repo. So if you want to go ahead and just grab that, and this is in the documentation. So if you go out and read the install guide, it will give you the links to all these on the GitHub repo. Okay, now you'll see the file there, polyglot v2.service. So now we're going to use Nano, which is just a text editor, and go ahead and edit that file. Okay. The working directory that we're in, this is just telling the systemd service, which is the service start service, where everything is. So this is just a little config file that we're going to create for Polyglot itself. So the working directory is going to be home, my user, and then we just created the directory Polyglot. Okay. Exec start is going to be the actual file that we want to run. Okay, that's the actual file that the executable, the binary. And then what user we're going to run it at, we're going to run it as E42. Okay, I'll go ahead and save that. I wrote 13 lines. Okay, now I need to go ahead and move that file to where the system startup scripts are. In this particular case, Debian and most of the newer Linux versions use systemd now. So that's going to be, I'm going to have to do that as an admin. So we're going to sudo move the polyglot v2 service file to lib systemd system. Okay, that'll move it over there. Then we need to tell it that it's there. So we need to tell system control to enable polyglot v2.service. Okay, it went ahead and created our symlink for us, which means basically that it enabled the service itself. We can do okay, go ahead and start Polyglot. And now, assuming everything went well, we should see Polyglot active and running. And this will just start a couple of lines of the config, so you can kind of ignore those, but you'll notice that it is active and running. So assuming we did everything correct, the manual process literally took us, what, 3, 4, 5 minutes there? Nothing too bad. So if we actually look at the file, the log file of Polyglot, it's actually located in your home directory. So tilde in Linux just means your home user directory. In this case, I am E42. So if I go to my home directory, that's just there. Okay, so if I look in my .polyglot directory, there's a logs directory, and then you'll see a debug.log. So I'm going to go ahead and nano the debug.log. Okay, and then you'll notice this is the startup. Here's all my startup from Polyglot's first run. Okay, if you come in here and look and run it manually, this is what you're going to want to look for. So you'll notice HTTPS, very important, HTTPS. Don't try to go to HTTP. This is the IP address, and this is the port that Polyglot's listening on. So if we go ahead and open up a new window and go to HTTPS, okay, you'll notice my connection is not private. This is because we use self-signed keys for HTTPS. The encryption or the traffic between the front end and the back end and you and the front end is encrypted. However, since we're using self-signed keys, it's possible for man-in-the-middle attacks, things like that, but we still feel it's better safe than sorry. So if we just advance here, proceed to 238, and there we go. Polyglot is up, Polyglot is running, everything's happy. From here, go ahead and go back to the Raspberry Pi videos, the how to set up a node server video. That'll show you exactly where to go from here, but that's the manual process with Debian X64 in this particular case. Let me know if you have any questions or comments. If not, we'll see you guys in the next video.